But I was struck again with that Alfred Whitehead.
Yeah.
Beauty is a harmony of contrasts.
Yeah.
And then something else that came to mind when you talked about silence. And then when you mentioned it this morning, I suddenly saw that, what's that sign in music where the music stops?
Oh, the rest?
The rest.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
And you know how you're going along, and all of a sudden there's a stop in the music, and I for one want to sing on to the
quickly,
and it doesn't happen, and it almost gives time for my spirit to catch up with the words.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a similar concept.
There was a Monday night, there was a lecture and a jazz performance at Regent College. But they were talking about jazz and leadership. And David Blake, wonderful guitarist, was talking about silence and rests. And what his comment had to do with it was, even though it's a short rest, a short silence in the middle, he said there are levels of resolution that take place in that silence that always surprise you. But without the silence, the resolution wouldn't take place.
There's a great Jewish writer, Abraham Heschel, who's a famous, wrote a book on Sabbath, and he called Sabbath a sanctuary of time. And it would be interesting to apply that to music, like a rest is a sanctuary in time that prepares space to actually receive the next note in its fullness. Sort of riffing with that. Yeah, that's deep. Yesterday we were talking about the silence prepares the ears to really hear it, so that response can happen. But if silence like that's a sanctuary in time that opens out to receive what's next.
There were several dichotomies that we were talking about. It just strikes me we could go over some of those again. That we were talking because you were talking about. I think it was productively holding certain tensions, not cutting them. But we identified some, and maybe I missed some when you were going over them. But for example, tradition and innovation.
Oh, right, yeah.
But I mean, we could build on what we're saying this morning, right? Silence and busyness. I think you were talking about the paying attention to the different rhythms of life.
Yes.
I have written childlike maturity, and I would just say that these look like separate things, but they're actually there's only one variable. Did I say chaos and order yet?
No, not yet.
That was one thing we were talking about a lot.
Yeah.
And then call and response. We're talking about the image of God, Imago Dei, and how kind of we're made in that image, but how nice jazz is for, it's essentially creative, so the creativity that we get to practice as part of our process. And we also talked about the ability to being open to giving and receiving love. Just a couple things. What strikes me about the whole thing about chaos and order, which is what we are working on in the sanctuary sessions, is I'm more okay with chaos than the other musicians, right? Because I'm more used to it longer.
Yeah.
But there's the mystery.
And we don't know enough, so you go, wow, that's amazing.
Well, there's the mystery of God.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, there's the mystery of God, and there's coming back to just highlighting what you're saying about that search, right? Searching and finding, but it never really ends. It's always part of the process. So maybe that's another tension that we have to hold, try to hold productively.
It's interesting how you said beauty is a harmony of contrasts. Who's that from?
Whitehead?
Was that Whitehead? Because my daughter, I have two daughters. I also have a son that's got Asperger's. And my youngest one had said, we were talking about beauty. We were out for a walk and stuff like, she's a bit of an old soul, but she said that beauty is found in our choices. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting in this context, where we make choices when we're improvising, or whatever we choose to bring and stuff like that. But she saw that the freedom of our individuality and our free agency. I'm putting words into her mouth a little bit, but there's beauty found in that. I thought, because we were just talking about how do you find beauty? Can you see? Can you reflect on God and know God exists by seeing beauty?
So anyways, I'm digressing a bit, but I knew from a young age I was going to be a musician. And then I went through the classical and the church way of becoming a musician. I was baptized in Anglican, my father's Church of England. He was an amateur singer and sang in choral contests and church choirs. And then I trained up to university level in music. Wasn't quite enough, and I started delving into more popular music. Coming from a mixed heritage with a British father and a Caribbean mother, there was a lot of different musical influences in our household. And being raised in the prairies as well, with Manitoba, you either listen to country or you listen to rock. So I gravitated towards rock.
Few.
Yeah. Thanks, Ron. And then through that, I discovered a whole host of singer-songwriters that I felt a deep connection with. And there's something about the Canadian landscape and the artists that we produce. There's a spirituality there that I tapped into at a very young age as well. And this is all, I hope this doesn't sound too convoluted what I'm saying, but it's all part of this journey that I've been on as an artist, as a person, and how it's all tapped into my spirituality. So people like Gordon Lightfoot and Joni Mitchell and Bruce Cockburn and Ian Thomas and some of the rock writers like Randy Bachman and Ray McGuire and Brian Smith from Trooper, and all these people just all fed into what I was becoming as an artist, as well as my classical and choral training that I was getting through the schools and the church contexts. And we went to church every Sunday. I was in Sunday school, and then I would come up and join my parents, and we'd have, the service. My brother and I would join the service. And then, as I mentioned last year, we went through this phase where the church was constantly changing ministers. And this led to a lot of, we were talking about change, a reaction to change, and dissonance. And of course, there was a lot of dissonance amongst the congregation with new leaders in the church at which we attended. And my father became disillusioned. He was very heavily involved in the church. I think he was a church warden or the church rector. I'm sorry if I'm not using the correct terminology, the warden. And he came home one Sunday and he said, "We're not going to go to church anymore. We're going to use Sunday as a family day." He was that disillusioned. My father started going to church again. About 20 years ago, I think he found it in him, and he found a church that really worked for him. And I think it was actually music. He wanted a church that had a little bit more music than our childhood Anglican one. No disrespect, so that's why he's attending that church. But the point is, I'm just glad that he was able to, get over his disappointment and disillusionment and find his way back to the church.
It's an interesting theme in the interviews we did. As Adele, I think, alluded to, it is that sense of disillusionment with, alienation from the church, and how music draws you back. Now, once it's drawn you back, you've got to deliver on the potential.
The rest of it.
Yeah, exactly. But still.
you.